Yeah, I told him about that. It's the first time. Yeah, I told him about that too. It's the first time. Charlie came around that signature. Sign his paper for him. You bet, my wife did.
I remember, I was born.
4 or 5 times I signed.
But I remember for sure.
Oh,
the
and your
end
dog
of it,
signed
I
it?
remember.
Yeah,
there
'cause
being
you'd have been
things
10 years
on, but-
I don't know if anybody else keeps it around or not. People.
A lot of it, but historic. Did you search that? Read that? I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
6 years.
I remember something that they voted on and had it towards
Somebody there.
Well, that's
Okay.
kind of true for the news too, you know?
Yeah.
Because you're maybe right in there. Yeah.
Is it available for us to
But
start?
where the action is, either not. In theater.
Yeah.
You're, I should say that. You are in theater.
Few years, Norm Hedge passed away.
Yeah.
What happened? I heard it the other day, just tipped over.
Well, apparently they did a wellness check, somebody called and couldn't get hold of it.
Yes, see,
Stumbled. But I don't know any more detail than that. High school classmate.
Yeah, who's saying that? Oh, Josh, I didn't know you were a 69er.
Yes.
So a lot of us 69ers. True, real 69. Not those wannabes.
Yes.
We used
Hi,
to-
Diane.
We used to have a party at Duforce. And we all turned. What's it, we all turned? I don't know, but we had it for 10 years. All the 69ers, it was surprising. We had it. Quite a group, we ended up with a band and cooking 3 big roasts.
Yeah, that sounds good. You have coffee made over there?
Yes, there's.
Yeah, it's slightly scratchy throat. Didn't need to talk a lot today.
I have a question for you. The Snowmobile Club put a sign up on the corner of U and 35.
They have coffee, but
Their
no
meat wrap
cups.
on Sunday afternoon. Put it up Sunday morning.
Just here to listen to. Not here to.
Take it down, there was a ticket on it.
Really?
Been here for a couple.
Wasn't me. I don't work weekends.
And I was just wondering because Andy Dancer has one up there. Either Lakeside has one on 35.
Well, you might want to reach out to the highway department.
Terrible thing. They're not-
Yeah, especially if you're seeing it on a highway. I
Right
know
on
they're,
35.
I know they're not allowed to do that. But I've always told people, if you do it like on a Friday, I'm not gonna go and mess with you. But if I see it there, you know, every single day, then I'm gonna start getting.
We put it up on Saturday.
I
Went
think
to
it's
take
kinda
it
like-
down Monday and it was.
I think it's kind of like speeding. You may or you may not get caught.
Yeah.
Not
But no,
supposed
I'm,
to do
yeah,
it.
I'm not chasing those type of signs on the weekends. So,
I thought it was kind of different.
Yeah, I wouldn't give someone a ticket. I'd either take the sign or I would write a letter to the owner of the sign and say, hey, knock it off.
Good morning. Welcome to Land Use and Information Committee meeting for December 5th, 2023. Notice has been posted in accordance with Wisconsin statute 19.84 open meeting law. Are there any public comments at this time? 3-minute limit. Shaking their head, no. Approval of the agenda order.
I would like to, I guess, the applicant for the conditional use permit is gonna be a little bit late, so I don't know if you wanna modify. Put the public hearing
Sure,
afterwards.
we can.
Yeah, because I'll move to amend the agenda to postpone the public hearing for the day until the applicant is present.
Second.
Second, all in favor,
I,
opposed? Approved. Approve the agenda order as was amended. Approval of the minutes from the November 7th, 2023 meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Payton. Second by Ms. Anderson. All in favor,
Aye.
opposed,
Aye.
carried.
Press
Thank-
on. Yay.
You were a little late there, Brent.
Well,
You always
I
make the
am.
motions.
I would have if I had if I had been unmuted, I would have done that.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning to you all.
So we're gonna skip over 5. The public hearing will be on to number 6, Land Services Property Information Zoning Division Reports.
All right, the exciting stuff here. So you see the reports are in there. Open. Staff reports, budget report, everything, looks fine for the budget. We are well over our revenue, budgeted revenue for the year. Every other line item is pretty much in line with where it should be, or even a little bit under. Yeah, really nothing too exciting in there. Permit numbers are in there. Just over 1,600 so far this year. I don't know if we'll hit 1,700. I don't know if we'll do 100 yet this month. Things have really slowed down. Still doing a few sewer permits though, with it being relatively warm out for this time of year, so.
Amazing.
Can't
Gas
be too-
penetration, how much would you say? A few inches yet?
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
That always is the issue, is
Mhm.
two things, it's frosted, the infiltrated surface, not gonna happen.
Yeah.
But also backfilling with frozen chunks is
Mhm.
not a good thing either.
Can't be too warm though. Just before I came, they had a emergency call. North Side Lake Road. Where a 5-year-old had been stung by a wasp that was starting to swell up.
Really?
Really?
Wow,
I thought, what?
weird,
Couldn't have been outside.
yeah.
So how many is that a day then, on a working day, that you approve?
I don't know, I gotta do the math. in
5,
my
I
head.
suppose you have to take about 5 days a week, huh?
Let's see here. 1,600. Well, it sounds bad if you look at it that way. It's only 6 a day if you divide them 250 work days.
Then
A
take your
year.
vacation out and take.
Yeah, when you start taking all that stuff out, but.
And the other thing is there's a slow time of year and a really busy time.
Yeah, and there might be January where you're
Sure.
issuing 0, and then
Yeah.
there might be, May when you're issuing 20 in one day, so.
And they applied for it yesterday, so why don't they have the permit?
Yep. Oh yeah, that's common. I need to build this tomorrow. Well, you should have put the permit in more than, today, earlier than today, so.
Well, I think even 6 a day is fair amount.
Yeah.
You have to
Almost a
work,
Permit an hour.
Mhm.
you have to work to
Mhm.
put that together.
And obviously, some of them are easier
People
than
People
others.
come back, I mean, they come, You tell them what they need.
Well, and that's 1,600, that's permits we issue, that's what, not all the phone
Exactly.
calls and
That's right, yeah.
everything else. A couple of years ago, I think I checked and I sent 7,000 emails in 1 year,
Yeah,
so.
So-
That's winds up being like 20 some emails a day, and then you get phone calls and you get the walk-ins and. So it all adds up,
so you, when you're not issuing permits, you're on the internet.
I'm twiddling my thumbs.
Yep.
Yep,
Are you getting any applications on?
oh, for the new hire?
No, I mean, no, just regular applications, for CUPs or whatever.
Oh, yeah, you still get a few, I think we'll have 2 so far for
No, but
February.
I mean, getting them online or not? Or are they all the hand ones?
Oh, yeah, everything you still have to fill it out by hand, yeah.
You don't get any online then? You ever think about getting them that way?
We're thinking about it, that's what, we want to try, that was a goal of ours, You know, it obviously didn't get worked on much this year, cause it's hard to work on those things when you're busy during the summer.
And especially when you're searching for staff and training staff,
Yes.
that makes it complicated by a whole nother level.
And we wanna try to also get a way to take credit cards,
Mhm.
but the problem. See, right now, how we do it is we don't take your money until we issue your permit. So if you apply for a permit and we can't issue it, we just hold your check until we work out whatever issues we have, you know, to get it before we can issue it. Well, if you take a credit card payment, then what if we don't issue the permit? Now, do we have to refund it? Well, then I think the county's paying fees or, you know, transaction costs. And then we're losing money unless we're gonna hold those transaction costs. I hear some counties, they're like, well, we just take the fee and then if we deny their permit, oh, well, we keep the fee. I'm like, well, that's not very, that would really agitate me if I paid $200 for a permit, then I tell you, no, you can't get the permit and have a good day, we're keeping your money.
Right. It's-
So then everybody's just gonna ask you 1,000 questions before they apply for the permit, in that case.
And part of it too, in the modern world, you know, people come in with the card, right? We used to have a whole strong box full of cash in the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, and then have to resolve it. Fortunately, at that time, some of my staff had worked in a bank,
Mhm.
so they were good at that,
Yeah.
but that was something that what would you call it? It bothered the treasurer and others that the land use department was taking in more cash than they were.
Mhm.
And, you know, they didn't have a safe or anything.
Yep.
It was, it's not like that anymore. Nobody does that much. I mean.
Not as
some-
much, yeah, it's mostly, we prefer checks, obviously. There are a few people that give us cash.
You know, at the training session, Hayward, guys remember the discussion about, for like conditional use permits, right, or applications. If in the town involvement, if the person doesn't go to the town, you know, or the town prevails on their recommendation for the comp plan and we deny it. But the point was, if they don't go to the town, you know, do you give them their money back? No, if they fail to do what we tell them to do as part of the process, you're not getting your money back. As you completed the application, you got a decision.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And even if we wind up dismissing it without prejudice, we had to go through the process. So I was surprised anybody even wondered about that, but they did.
Isn't there a way to put like a hold on a credit card and
Well,
then?
that's what I'm thinking, I'm kind of talking to the treasurer's office with how to do that, but there are some where we sit on it for months. You know, I don't know how you put a hold on it for just a few days, cause
Right.
our permit might come in and we, you know, they give us the cash or the check and we go out and we do a site visit and we're like, hey, it doesn't meet the setbacks, you gotta move it, restake it, and then they fall off the face of the earth for 3 months, and then 3 months later, they go, oh yeah, we restaked it, come and check.
Use the solar array in Webb Lake as an example.
Yeah,
You know, we had to have so much information provided to us to consider it, that it took 2 months to put everything together.
Yeah.
You know, and if it would have been something that would have caused us to deny it, you know, right?
We just put in a new system. And, we can, for instance, you come in and, you have a Bloody Mary and then you're gonna have breakfast. Well, we put the Bloody Mary in. Then when you decide to have breakfast, then we pack and open that ticket up, then we put that in. And then, we take your credit card and put it in right then. We just don't get paid until your bills, till you have everything done that you wanna do. And, I mean, you could sit there, so people could walk out and come back the next day with their credit card. And then,
It's,
okay,
it's carrying it.
yeah, and it'll carry it for as long as you leave it on that screen.
That's, yeah, that would be a possibility.
Yeah.
Or you don't charge, I mean, if it's for a permit. But I suppose that's the online part that's hard. I was gonna say. As soon as the permit's issued, then. You get their credit card.
Yeah,
Because
that's
they
when we
can't-
wanna charge it.
When
I mean, but you
issue-
don't really need it till then. I mean, because if they want their permit, they're gonna pay for it.
Yeah. Well, I even thought about if we write the stuff down, but then they're like, well, we don't wanna have everybody's credit card and security codes laying around in the office, you know? Cause that could be a,
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
weakness.
That's frowned upon.
yeah,
Oh.
so.
What would you say your percentage of not issuing the permits is? Like out of,
Out of 1,600, probably 100. We probably have a hold pile about this tall for this year, and every year usually is about that thick.
because the other thing you could do is charge the card and then if you don't issue the permit, is refund them.
Yeah,
But, you know, another step, but it's not
Well, and,
too difficult.
and we get the charges for it though.
Right.
yeah.
Are you thinking about adding a processing fee for a credit card?
Well, that's what I, you know, if we didn't collect any revenue, then, you know. I would wanna probably charge a processing fee if we gave them, if we didn't issue the permit, but we ran their card and then had to refund it.
Yeah,
Cause I'm sure they're gonna charge us Visa or MasterCard for that,
Sure.
those transactions.
Certainly.
yeah, for both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we issued the permit, I don't think we'd wanna charge them, we'd just say that's part of our fees.
Well, then you're
Credit card
gonna have to up your fees because you're gonna get charged.
Yeah, I know,
3.5%.
yeah.
Well, that's a decision you can make on your own.
Well, in the fees, I mean, we haven't raised our fees for 6, 7 years, so I mean, we could always have a discussion too of looking at adjusting,
Okay.
you know. You know, cause like today, so we have one conditional use permit on the meeting today. That's a $300 revenue. Well, when you start adding your per diems, your mileage, your staff time, my staff time,
We upside down.
oh yeah. I usually tell people it's $1,000 pretty much to run a meeting. So if we don't have 3 applications, we're losing money. But the months we have 5 or 6, then we're making money.
and on the other hand, just, I can't quite remember how to phrase it, but we're not supposed to make.
Correct.
Supposed to only cover our expenses.
Yep.
And it used to always be an interesting argument in Washburn County, is that our revenues met our expenses.
Yep.
If you realize we didn't own the courthouse, right?
Yes.
It was just staff, travel, everything.
Yep.
We would, you know, we would have revenues back when we were charging a lot less. Now we're close to $100,000 a year.
Mhm.
And the salaries and whatnot, benefits were about that for the 3 or 4 person staff,
Yeah.
right? So, and it was hard to get the county board's head around the fact that that was because it was really busy. And if there's a downturn, we're still gonna be all there, but we're not gonna be breaking even. And they actually took land use off the levy.
Mm.
And then when the bubble popped, had a terrible time figuring out how to pay for it.
Yeah,
Because
back
it
on.
didn't go away,
Yeah,
but the revenues dropped sharply, right?
yeah.
Here, that was not ever the case.
Well, if you look at our revenue, I mean, right now, you know, that's for a staff of recovering. Staff of like 5 or 6, cause you know, the GIS person is part of my department, you know,
Right.
but we're not getting revenue for her position. And you have, you know, Tammy, you know, secretary, you know, that's rolled into our cost of doing business.
Land and water.
And, you know, some of her time is in my budget, I believe.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's, but then, yeah, if you figured in electricity, you know, heat, all the things to run the office, yeah, you know, we a lot more revenue to
Right,
break even.
right. It's not fair to say it's truly
Yeah.
self-sustaining, but,
Yeah.
but it covers a lot of the expense,
Yes.
the direct expense of
Yep.
staff and stuff.
So I think at the end of the year, we'll be giving, you know, money back to the general fund. So,
Yeah, always good. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a sign of activity. And
so, you know, then one could argue, should our fees not be adjusted, you know? But I think we need to look at our public hearing fees, I
No,
think at least.
right, I think that, but at the same time, it's the overall operation, you know, can contribute. Everything else goes up
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
You know, gotta buy vehicles, gotta
Mhm.
buy gas, all of that.
Yeah.
Daily operation support isn't the public hearing component.
Yes.
So,
What's the cost for publishing public?
Well, if it was just one like this, it'd probably be like $100-ish in that range. If it's just one.
For the paper?
Mhm.
In corporate council, I mean, I think it's consulted quite often on some of the conditional uses.
Well,
Yeah,
and when we have postponements for various reasons and we publish in order to maintain a open meeting law criteria the way we need to. Right?
I noticed it twice if we postpone something.
So, right, so that sometimes it's more,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes quite a bit more when we go for like a year with continuing it
Mm-hmm.
and then we finally dismiss it.
And the time to put together, you know, a 300-page packet, that doesn't, you know, that takes me more than 2 minutes to put that all together and
Hopefully we don't have a lot of.
I know, right?
Think of all
Because
the
we get a
paper,
few every year.
think of all the paper we saved,
Mhm.
Was it last month, like 400 or 399?
$398 or something.
Still not, I think
They
we,
have been bigger.
yeah, I think we had over 500 once or twice. On the, I believe on the Chelmo, probably once.
And that includes letters from.
Yeah, that's
people
letters
sending
from
That was,
people
that
and all
was
that stuff.
pandemic based and we
Yeah,
consolidated everything into 4 days of public hearings in the highway shop. All these people they never appreciated the fun of doing that.
oh, that was fun.
Good thing we're not paid by the hour.
Yeah.
And they had to wear a mask also.
Social distancing, all the chairs were 6 feet apart and you could not hear a thing in there. The
Yeah,
first time
audio was horrible. on
Chuck
that
showed up
first
with
day.
his audio and rescued us, or we'd have never
Yeah.
been able to do it.
Then Chuck brought in his speakers and that worked well.
And then, Callie passed her soil test,
Great,
so she's all credentialed up now.
Good.
It's a good thing.
Good.
Um,
that is not an real easy thing to acquire.
especially if you ask Washburn County, I think some of them guys are like on their tries 5 or 6.
Well, you know, the thing about it is it's a somewhat of an intuitive thing too.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes engineers have a terrible time passing that.
Yeah.
Because they think there's nothing you can't fix with a D8,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you have to look at the landscape, look at
Yep.
elevations, you know. I remember a soil scientist, a soil mapper once doing a perk test and there were 3 elevations, and you need 3 that define the soil absorption cell. She didn't do it. Did not provide a test a system could be put in.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful report, but had no idea what a soil septic system was, right? And so there's a certain level of look at the site and see it and not
Mhm.
see it.
Yep.
And where to look and how to look that is not easily taught. Gotta learn it. But yeah, that's really good news.
Mhm.
I thought you might have to sign up web again, maybe.
Well, I have my credentials.
Oh, okay.
I have now.
I didn't remember that you got them.
Yeah. No, it's not like I don't have enough things to do, so ideally I don't want to be doing that as well. But I do have them,
Oh,
In
that's,
case of
as a
emergency.
backstop.
yes.
Yeah, that isn't, you don't have to be out looking at pits necessarily,
Mhm.
but it's good to have.
Yeah.
I helped, one of our plumbers who's colorblind, get his credentials. Soil testing, because he wanted to be able to review soil tests. And that's fine, just don't do any, because you can't see modeling.
Yep.
You know, you can
Yeah.
understand it, that's great, but don't go look at, unless it's pure sand and, you know, somebody else is there to look over your shoulder, don't do any. You
Yep.
will be wrong
Yep.
at some point.
How many requests do you get for the emails and that are coming
Oh,
to the office?
Public record email,
Yeah,
public record requests. Oh, well, it depends. You know, this year. I've probably had 6 to 7. And they can be very broad.
like Nate said, said how many did they get,
Yeah.
that they weren't gonna answer because they were too vague.
Yeah, I mean, I had one that was asking for 9 years worth of records that I would have had to we had to hand dig out of storage, so. Those ones are tough, but we can charge the cost to. Get the record. But, when they ask for emails, James can literally do that in like 1 minute, he can type in a few keywords. So you can't recover those costs, but.
But that-
The hard part is then if there's stuff in there that's not supposed to be distributed, like attorney-client privilege or HIPAA things, so when they do really broad searches, it might start grabbing things from like HHS staff, because if they put a generic type word in there.
The same thing happens with school, and they make
Yeah.
an open records request because you may be getting names of minors of kids
Yep,
and guidance or whatever issues relating to that. You can't, that has to be vetted because you can't release that.
I was just wondering, like Nate said, how many thousand they, some attorney wanted. Does that all go through James then or not?
all the email stuff goes through James, yeah. Or any sort of thing that's in electronic form, James can pretty much assess it, get it.
Those kind of requests, like Town of Jackson has had open records requests pertaining to the motocross track.
Yep,
Yeah.
I've had 1 or 2 to that one. Yep.
But the point of it is the Town of Jackson is like, what,
Mm-hmm.
and the town boards, there's a town board member here, they don't have dedicated emails that are strictly for town government.
Yeah.
So it's their personal emails involved.
Yeah.
And their supervisors at the town level haven't been,
Well, they don't have an attorney on staff to help guide them on what
no,
they
and,
should or shouldn't be
and
doing.
they don't-
or-
they're
Yep.
setting themselves up for a
Mhm.
potential finding of impropriety by accident,
Yep.
because they sent somebody an email or another town board
Mhm.
member copied it or whatever, all of a
Yep.
sudden it's a quorum,
Yep.
open meeting law violation, We've been trying to say, don't do that,
Mhm.
There's a reason why Goodell wants to talk on the phone and not email, right?
Mhm. Yep.
But it becomes a tool to harass them,
Mhm.
if nothing else. And that's the other downside of it.
Yeah, like we had a request here recently that had one of the keywords was camping. Well, if you look at every one of our land use permits on the front page, that's one of the options I can check is camping. So that if you would do a auto search, it would grab every permit. Even though that permit might have been for a dwelling in the town of Blaine that had nothing to do with camping, but since that is a word on the first page of that permit, it would flag that as, oh, here's a match. So that was why it would have been so difficult with that one request where I'm like, you're asking for stuff that's so vague and 9 years worth of data. I basically said it, we'll pull 9 years of hard copies and go through them by hand. I said, that's the only way we could do it. Otherwise, we'll give you 40 or what would it have been? Would have been like 10,000, 12,000 permits, but then would we then get in trouble to look like we're purposely burying them with information and not legitimately trying to fulfill their request, because that's what our attorneys would argue. Oh, you're purposely overburdening us,
Well,
trying to
and-
not fulfill the
It
request.
strikes me that the open records law too is still from the days of hard paper.
Yep.
And that was it.
Yep.
Now that digital data, searches can, and then some of those requests, as you said, they mix first names and last names. They
Mhm.
are looking in a particular time frame.
Yeah.
That may or may not even exist,
Yeah.
or may be so broad that it's not, you can't make a can't make a response to the request.
Well, I think James has been a few times where he's told me that, okay, here, I did a search for those keywords and it's 250,000 emails.
Wow.
So then what do? You just give them 250,000 emails? But what if there's HIPAA stuff or HHS stuff mixed in there because, it wasn't down to certain people. It was using these generic, like Craig or Jason. Okay, well, maybe HHS is dealing with 10 Jasons out there.
Yeah.
For different things that are protected information that would pop up in that search. Because that was one of the keywords. So I don't know, it's tough.
It's got, but it amounts to it's something you just have to accept is gonna happen.
Yep.
And don't be troubled by it, because as long as you didn't do anything.
Mhm.
There's nothing going to show up.
Yep.
Right, but it's still an annoyance.
Yeah, you gotta be very good about not doing any personal stuff. County equipment. Yeah, anything that, basically, like, I think I heard like somebody told me, if you would be concerned if it was front page, that whatever you're sending is on the front page of the newspaper, then don't do it. So if you're gonna send that email, but you would not like it if it was front page on the Sentinel the next day.
Yep.
Don't do it.
That's what we get the big bucks for,
Mm-hmm.
or sitting,
Yep.
right?
Well, do you wanna go on to the discuss items for potential future ordinance amendments or not?
Sure. I don't think it'll take us all that long, because we're not gonna just.
Yeah, we're not gonna decide anything today. So I think, as we've gone through committee meetings and listened to things and I usually try to make mental notes of, all right, are there things we wanna fix, change, adjust? So I'm just kind of looking for, do you guys have any items that you don't like in the ordinance, concerned, wanna make adjustments? I mean, I can think of a few.
I'll start.
Yeah,
And I'm gonna announce I have no notes. I did not write this down. So, the first one, and Jason and I talked about this after the Webb Lake solar thing. We only provide for a solar facility or any of this kind of project.
any energy related
stuff in forestry.
Yep.
And the reason for that is because we had a couple of dams since 1919.
Yeah,
There are a
Danbury
couple what?
dams.
hydro dams.
Hydro
Okay.
dams. And that forestry made sense, the Clam Dam, west of F, Danbury Dam. But nobody was thinking of solar stuff or any wind or any of that kind of thing. I think it's necessary for us to think about adding that into another district or two to deal with it, because we're going to see more requests like this in the future. There's a big push. Wisconsin could generate 50% of its electrical demand by solar, according to the powers that be. I don't think we're gonna see any 100-megawatt facilities here, but we probably will see either Northwest Electric or Polk Burnett wanna put some more in somewhere.
Well, I think I've had 3 basically preliminary discussions with a utility company, not a local one. Basically looking at 3 different sites for potentially doing solar in Burnett County.
But it seems to me that the districts could be probably A2 and A4. I don't know about A, because there's some tension about exclusive ag contracts and farmland preservation. But that's going to the state Supreme Court at some point. in the near future. The legislature has introduced some a proposal that would allow a community-based solar that would not require a utility or a co-op to do it. Right now, under state law, the only people can do it could be Northwest or Polk Burnett,
Yeah,
but that could change.
Yep.
If that changed, maybe there would be some of these.
well, and I think that's that company that was reaching out to me is that where they would need that law change to do
To
that.
do it.
But they're looking at sites.
But
So-
I would like to see us amend the ordinance fairly quickly so that if somebody else asks, we aren't rezoning to accommodate them. Or we're gonna run up into the plan discussion, which we need to have next, but we're gonna rezone what is A2 to forestry in order so that we can put solar collectors. That doesn't make any sense. And I wouldn't, I'd like us to investigate if exclusive ag would be okay too, because some farmers might want to take advantage of some not so good farmland and do that. But we gotta make sure that that's not gonna get at odds with farmland preservation or other
Yeah, well,
issues.
and I could see, wind, that doesn't have a big footprint. So, you can still farm, you drive out west, you see their farm around the wind towers, but
That's true.
solar is a little different animal, it's kind of hard to
There's a,
egg around all the
I haven't
panels.
seen that though. where they
Interestingly
raise them
enough.
In in agriculture, raise the crops.
there's a consulting group, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I found it researching on WebLink. That has put out a map of appropriateness, let's call it, for wind and solar in the upper Midwest. And our part of Wisconsin is favorable for solar and not for wind.
Hmm.
We're not windy enough to really generate wind much at all, maybe, but we're as good as anywhere in Wisconsin for solar for
Mhm.
that county. It's Douglas Snow and down the west coast, all the way to the southwest corner is all pretty favorable. And as you go east, it diminishes. More clouds, maybe, I'm not, But anyway, I found that interesting, but I think
Mhm.
that means that as far as Wisconsin goes in upper Midwest, we're as good as anybody would be. It is, and the technology is such now that with the traversing, low facility like they're proposing, follows the sun and picks the albedo off the snow in the winter and, pretty effective. So that would be one.
And that would be, we would have it still be a CUP in those districts, not a permitted use.
Yes, because we
Yeah.
can regulate by CUP legally, but we can't really, as we know,
Yep.
can't ban, can't prohibit.
Yep.
We can regulate though. And-
Yep.
And we gained in our regulation of Webb Lake with the revisiting for fire and whatnot, a better permit than we would have got probably otherwise. So
Yeah.
I think that in that case, even though Webb Lake may not be happy, they got a lot of what they wanted. Their concerns were addressed. So I think that would be one.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was, in the comprehensive plan process, we've been inserting into the plan some language about conditional use permits that affect changes of land use or for guidance. And the plan can only be guidance. The plan, even though we adopt it, is not a regulation, and the statute specifically exempts that. Don Hamilton wanted to be here today to talk about this, but he hurt his knee during deer season, so he's getting his knee fixed today. I will share the email he sent with Jason too. But we raised some of the same issues that we heard over at our training session. That, as you guys who were all there know, we can consider comp plan as in consideration of conditional use permit, but we need, according to their guidance from CLU, we need to provide for that in the ordinance. So what we need to do is probably revisit the conditional use sections and add some compliance with comp plans where the proposed CUP would affect a significant land use change, affect the intensity of the use and character of the district would have effect. That would allow us though to look at some of these innocuous things, a nail salon in a home as a home occupation as not being something that would rise to the level of character of the district or intensity of the use. My poster child for this is Cabin Nails out on A. Right next.
What are they?
Cabin Nails, a nail salon out on A. where, turn this on, that'll help, where, it's immediately next to the motocross track we denied. They're both conditional uses. Did one clearly had potential adverse effect on the adjoining property. The other one had nobody even notices it, right? They're not the same, but both could be viewed as commercial uses, right? So in order to get some handle on this, because we're where the buck stops, the towns aren't issuing conditional use permits, we are. But we need to be following our guidance in the plan, so when we say some of the language we're putting in the plan is going to say there's an exemption in the statute that says a conditional use permit does not need to be consistent with the comp plan. That's all it says. Doesn't qualify it at all. We're qualifying that, saying that if it's in the public interest for that conditional use, for the fire station, the town hall, gravel pit for a specific road project that's going to be closed when it's done, all of these sort of things, solar collecting facility now, that are in the public interest to have, even though it may not be addressed in the plan, we can approve that using that exemption provided in the statute, but not for something that will make a major change of the zoning, of the use of the land. That requires a rezoning, should require a rezoning. Or us to enable ourselves to say, this is such a major change of land use that it is not consistent with the plan and we will deny it. And the remedy is to rezone and amend the plan. Right? In order to capture that and kind of formalize it, we need to develop some language in the zoning ordinance, because the plan can't control it, the ordinance. The ordinance is going to be, the plan will provide guidance to the ordinance, but is not going to supersede the ordinance. Okay? So that's my spiel.
Well, and one thing, I'm not sure if it'd be ordinance or something else, but at the meeting in Hayward where it discussed not adding conditions to a rezone, that apparently that's a no-no. And there's a lot of things I'd like discussion and clarification on, because let's say you're rezoning something just so they can put up a sign, you're not changing the use. Apparently you can't attach to it that it's like, well, when that's done, it's going to revert back. It sounds like that was a no-no, or
Yeah, you're right. But it technically is a conditional zoning, which is dubious. Another amendment we should consider, right off the top of my head here, is if we have a conditional use permit for a commercial or industrial use on a property, maybe we should amend the sign ordinance to say that standards for a commercial sign are applicable to this, so long as that conditional use permit remains in effect. Then if it would be voided or vacated, then the sign would become a non-conforming sign, but at some point could be removed if it was going to be reconstructed or changed. But I think that would provide a better alternative than rezoning for a sign, which has always been dubious and has been done by us and Barron County and Washburn County and everybody over time, but it never was really a good idea. The sign ordinance is really strict, right? It's St. Croix counties. It could be softened a little bit to accommodate some of these things, particularly if we're going to use CUPs as consistent with the plan and not just grant a CUP so somebody can have a sign too,
Yeah.
right?
And it is a little bit soft in some of those. Cause it does talk about if you're zone this, but the property is used for this type of activity, then you can get bigger type signs.
The most egregious example of that I ever saw was in Washburn County between Shell Lake and Spooner, where it was unzoned, right? So in an unzoned township, there had to be a commercial activity within 1,000 feet to have billboards. So there's a beekeeper, 24 by 24 garage beekeeping supplies, right? And the DOT said, well, that's commercial, and allowed billboards to go up on 63 there. The phone literally rang off the wall in the zoning office. Why did you guys do that?
Yep.
Don't talk to me, talk to DOT. We did not, but that kind of, okay, I can use this as an excuse to grant that, had consequences that were, really upset a whole lot of people, right? But the point being, your point is well taken, right? That's probably a better answer to somebody wanting to do that than rezone to industrial, because then the town of Siren winds up with an industrial 40 in the middle of nowhere that may not be consistent with their plan or our plan.
I think right now it's still not consistent with their plan, cause that one's still in my hold pile, cause we technically postponed it until the plan's amended.
Right, but let's say the town says, no, we're
Yeah.
gonna instead recommend that you guys amend the sign ordinance, which is the culprit here, not the other thing.
Yeah, cause that's the whole reason they're trying to get that rezone in that case
Yeah.
was for the sign.
And
it was
I'd be
not for
fine with telling the
use.
applicant there, we'll not enforce this until, we'll go through the amendment process. If it gets adopted, fine.
Yeah,
And then,
well, and that's why the sign's still there. I always tell people, as long as you're trying to work through the process and not delaying it,
right,
good faith effort by
good faith
everyone,
effort. And
then we can leave the
but
things.
I think this would be a
So-
better good faith effort than the alternative. Right? So,
And and then one thing too, we get a lot of chicken requests.
mhm.
Do we wanna, start backing off and allowing, some sort of number of animal units?
If we're patient, the state's gonna pass a law that says you can have certain number of chickens, no matter where you are or what you are.
Yeah, that is
But
true.
they haven't passed that law yet.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think that's sort of true. And the state, I looked at, this was in the Milwaukee Journal a while back. And it said no roosters and a relatively small number, I mean, less than 10 hens.
Yep.
And like, who'd ever care, right? And we did do that as a policy in Washburn County. We never amended the ordinance. We just said, if you have 10 or less chickens and no roosters, we don't care. We
Yeah.
don't have time to chase your chickens.
Yeah.
No chicken catchers in the staff.
Yeah. Well, and we're not over the case either, but nowadays it's, zoning gets used as a tool between neighbors that can't get along.
Yeah.
So then we get the phone call going, hey, they got one thing over there that's illegal, go get them, and
So before your time, we told the guy he had to get rid of his chickens. He said, okay, he got guineas instead to harass his neighbor because they weren't chickens. That we meant poultry, but Jim inadvertently just said chickens. So he said, nope, I had to go out and see him. Nope, guineas are poultry. He meant poultry. You can't have them either. But they were louder and noisier and stuff.
Yeah. And I think when I go back and think about all the CUPs we've had for, chickens, horses, those type of things, there's been a few though that have been denied. I do remember one in Bonner Lake on the west side, southwest kind of side there of the lake. That one was denied. The Lake Association, I think, did not want it. So do we say if you're a riparian, you can't have them, or you still gotta get a CUP if you're on a lake or not, we could go so many directions with that. I don't know how.
I think if we make it a small number is generally acceptable with appropriate management of manure and whatnot.
Yeah, keeping them fenced, that seems to be an issue
Yeah.
too, that they're free roaming, that gets people agitated too, so.
Free range chicken only needs 1 square foot of grass, technically. So. Anyway,
Might have to be right on the highway.
well, then it's why did the chicken cross the road comes up all the time, it's an
Yeah.
issue, but. Anyway.
So I'll look at maybe coming up with some language for you guys to review related to.
Yeah, what we kind of did, and we did it just to get it off of our agendas, was say that, we don't consider that few chickens to be rise to the level of needing a conditional use.
Yeah.
We had a guy, didn't know it, had a barn, everything, happened to be across from the lake, zoned RR1. Shouldn't have been, should have been like A2, but it wasn't back in the day. And he got 100 chickens. And the neighbors didn't notice them until July. And they were meat chickens, anyway. So we said, yeah, can't have them. You gotta get rid of them. We're giving you until like the 15th of September when they were gonna all be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want to continue this kind of stuff, rezone your property to the A2.
Yeah.
RA in Washburn District. And, that's what happened, but yeah, they were crawling and you could smell them and stuff, and the people on the waterfront side got concerned,
anything else? You guys, now there is supposedly a new shoreline ordinance model
Model,
that is going to be coming out soon. I don't know what that means exactly. I was told a couple weeks ago it was coming out, and it hasn't been yet. And the person that was the lead on it just left DNR.
oh,
Mike
that's really,
Wimpolz, left for a different position. So I don't know if that's gonna delay it, but you know, I think that'd be a good time to probably, if they're coming out with a new model ordinance, to see what ours, if any adjustments need to be made to ours at the same time. But I also don't wanna be doing this in the summer, you
yeah,
know,
I was
so
gonna say, it'll probably come out in May, the way things work.
pretty much, yep,
But,
yep.
but if we could even get a draft of it to be a little aware of what it might say, it would help
Mhm.
us think about it,
Yeah,
that would be good.
Yeah.
So.
okay.
But, you know, if anybody else have anything from the session to offer that we were at?
You said you had a few ideas.
Yeah, the chicken one, that one bothers me because it's just a time waster for me to run a CUP through for a few chickens or something. I've got some other notes on my desk, like nothing major, but like small little things. Little tweaks here and there. Well, I mean, the hot topics, you know, storage units. Campgrounds, I think with campgrounds, we've got that resolved, or, you know, we made the amendments to get that stuff right.
Yeah,
Storage units, I don't know, I mean, that seems to be going fine with our process right now.
and I see, you know, there, some places, that's one of the things they noticed, one of the things they showed as people adverse to kind of were storage facilities. You know, as a, in a slideshow that they put on, but generally speaking, it seems like people around here, if you don't provide storage facilities, then people tend to build great big buildings for themselves that are, you know, if in a shoreland area to store the toys, right? But then there becomes impervious surface issues and other things involved. It's gonna be something somewhere.
Mhm.
And somebody's private building might be just as unattractive, for lack of a better word, than a commercial one that we put some conditions on to screen and whatnot. So I think it's sort of a necessary use that is gonna store, stuff is gonna be stored one way or another, right?
And is the word campground defined for us by the state, or do we have things that define it? Because campground, RV park, park models, I mean, what a campground used to be is not what a campground is now. And I don't know if there's any differences where if it's called a campground, it's all encompassing, or there's different ordinances if it's, you know, basically parked there or semi-permanent.
Well, we have,
So-
or when we did our ordinance amendments, we defined park model, portable, rustic. So we have very specific definitions that is, if you're camping encompasses all of that. A campground could be rustic, RV, you know, park models, it could be any of those. But then we limited that we only allow the park model types in the RRRC district. You got it, if you wanna have camping in the A2 or the F1, then you're gonna have the rustic type, portable type one.
So you did kind of divide that out.
Yes, so we tried to put the heavy intensive campground, which doesn't leave, AKA the park model ones that sit there all year round, that has to be in that new district.
They're actually a resort.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, it's, the reality is that the guy with the towing a little pop-up trailerable camper is, like Steve Austin once referred to as quaint to see that now. That's not what people do anymore, you know? And he's right.
mhm,
It is true. It's functionally a manufactured home community of small units, which 400 square feet is a magic number. More than that, 500 is where manufactured homes start, I think. 400 is a camper, and then there's some park models that have a little open porch or whatever, but don't count as internal space that probably would measure 500 square feet, but are still, and they've got a lofted second story, but they're still a camper, not a manufactured home. So that was where the issue was that type of facility is not what we used to think of as a campground.
And is there anything just with more and more Airbnbs? It's like, I know the, PCTC and their taxing unit and a lot of the towns are signing on. Are there any ordinances that we need to look at again, or we're pretty cool other than?
Well, yeah, but I forgot, that's another kind of hot topic, the short-term rental, the Airbnb type stuff. There are some counties that are completely hands off and say we're not even gonna regulate them. Then you got us, I think we're kind of in the middle, we require a permit for them, but we don't prohibit them because they're a permitted use. As long as you get a permit and your septic, main thing we're looking at is septic sizing, as long as that's correct, we're gonna allow you to do it. But then there's other entities out there that I think are trying to say, well, that's a commercial use. And you need to get a CUP, but then or not a CUP, a rezone. Because they're saying that's a commercial use and it needs to be in a commercial district. But then you also have that counties can't prohibit short-term rentals, so I don't know how some of those counties get into that minutia there, but.
The question, Chuck is the guy who would answer this question. He'll be back in a minute, but the issue with the towns taking that on, with the licensing type of thing, there's a handful that are pretty interested, and some like Jackson kind of skeptical about the whole thing because of enforcement. And that's a question I don't really understand either, is how would that enforcement be done by this entity that was going to track them? What are the consequences if you just say, no, I'm not going to get your license, right? But we used to do that, and look, it was like a Where Waldo game. We'd find somebody's promotion, they wouldn't say the address, but they'd have pictures and references to what's in the lake and whatnot. And as we were wandering around doing inspections and stuff, we'd kind of keep looking for them, and most of the time could find them, and then send them a letter that they were in violation. And sometimes they quit, and sometimes they just kept it up. We get a lawyerly letter to quit harassing their relatives. Larry and Daryl and my other brother Daryl were all there. So it's just not an easy answer. But I don't know currently what the level of interest by towns in Burnett County is to jump into that.
Well, and another, thing we have going on too is there's since we technically have no limit on the size of a dwelling. There's another county that I talked to that someone put in, and I think it was an 18 bedroom sewer system. And it's the whole purpose is short-term rental.
36.
Now, when do you start to say, well, that's now like a motel? I mean, because that's how far people are pushing this, because then now they can say the cabin sleeps 36 people legally, when they have that big of a sewer system.
Yeah, 36, 2 people per bedroom would be the theoretical number.
Yeah, so, do you want us, is there a way that then you start to say, well, once a house is over a certain number of bedrooms, now it's some other entity? I don't know, but then
Yeah, but the
how hard do you
code
want to push on it?
just traditionally said 1 or 2 family dwellings, right?
Yep.
So it could be two 9-bedroom duplex.
Yep. Yep.
Type of thing to get 18 bedrooms, but yeah, it seems like it's stretching the envelope beyond recognition.
And that's what happens, and then laws get changed, that's how laws get made, is people push it, and eventually it'll get ratcheted back by someone or something, but we don't have, I think we've got some 10 bedrooms
Well, I
that
believe
people
that.
have put in our county basically to rent, because they want to be able to have 20 people stay in their cabin.
enforcement becomes the issue, but I know I don't want to like over enforce. I mean, basically the goal is to get people to just follow the rules and have the number of people that matches the sewer system. But can it be more severe? It's like, okay, you've received a warning, but I know proving it is hard, but it's like, well, your permit's gonna get pulled for a year. I mean, but I don't know what that involves. It's like, do we even have the muscle to do that? It's like, because eventually it's like, maybe people just follow the rules that are meant to protect the land and the neighbors and.
It's just an observation, but it seemed to me that a lot of the short-term rental surge happened in the bubble rising era, and people were buying waterfront property because it accelerated in value so quickly. You could sit on it for 2 or 3 years and make a lot of money. And then when the bubble popped and the valuations went down, all these people were underwater and they needed to get some revenue out of these places, so they started renting them helter skelter, and they never cared about having the lake place in the first place, really. It was an investment. They hated the bugs and didn't like the, sand in their toes or whatever. And so they did not have the same consideration of that property that the other people on either side of them did. And those are some of the more problematic people renting because they weren't vetting people. There were, people were showing up, 3-bedroom home, sleeps 18 or 10 or whatever. Loft over the garage we didn't know about, but we found out that way, that kind of stuff. And it may be, as people appreciate what they own, might calm down a little, but I don't know, really.
Yeah, I don't know either. Yeah, but enforcement is the challenge. On those. All takes time.
Well, there again, and the state passed the law to make it legal and charged, the state agency to regulate it, but didn't provide any more staff or funding or anything. And the public health sanitarian types were from 2 or 3 counties, 12 counties now, probably? Maybe what did Kathy Lembazeder had
Oh,
before
it
she
was
retired?
so many that it was ridiculous.
And so she, just like Harrington really with the water rate program, all you do is answer emails and can't even get out in the field hardly. And you can't, you can argue malicious intent and can't prove it. That the whole idea is to have the rules but don't enforce them.
Correct. That's what I've heard. A lot of people say.
It's sort of why we're doing what we're doing with operations ordinance in agriculture, because we can at least have the status to enforce it. Because the state spread so thin there as well.
Yep.
Right?
Well, I think that's the ultimate goal is with a lot of this stuff is to pass it down to the county.
Yeah, force the counties to take it on, but don't provide the counties any revenue sources to do it.
Yep.
So, but we're getting really cynical here, so we need to move on.
All right. Well, some stuff then I'll look at.
Yeah, we'll have about a month in the middle of winter when I'm not supposed to lift anything heavier than a coffee cup. I can work on ordinance language. I'll volunteer because I'll need something to do. But anybody else wants to sign on, I think we could just I'll send it to you and I, and share it with everybody as we look at trying to make language that might work, if that works.
All right, are we done with, let's see, that was item 7?
Yeah.
You want to go to the public hearing now, or do you wanna?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you're Todd, right?
Yes.
Yep.
yeah, we forced you to sit through some boring stuff for a while, but
That's okay.
So I'll read the public hearing notice.
Yep.
Okay, notice of public hearing, State of Wisconsin, County of Burnett, Tuesday, December 5th, 2023 at 9 a.m. at the Burnett County Government Center, room 160, Town of Meeting, Southern Wisconsin, regarding the following. Burnett County Land Use Shoreline Protection Ordinances. Number 1, conditional use permit CUP 2316 Birchwood Beach Properties LLC. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the town of Trade Lake, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that Todd Engstrom, on behalf of Birchwood Beach Properties LLC has made an application for a conditional use permit for the terms of Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to construct a rental storage building on the parcel with address 21711 Spirit Lake Road West in the RR2 zoning district, Lot 1, CSM, Volume 23, page 200, in the southeast quarter, the southwest quarter, section 11, Town 37 North, Range 18 West.
Thank you. Conditional use permit CUP 23-16 Birchwood Beach Properties. Will the applicant please come forward, state your name and what your plans are?
Oh, hi, my name is Todd Engstrand. And basically, we're just gonna replace a building that came down last winter from snow load. It's actually smaller than the building that was there. And we've cleaned it all up now and just want to put up a 40 by 120 to store some of our stuff and some of the stuff that was previously stored, just campers, or residents, basically, pontoons and boats is all that ever goes in there, plus some of our own equipment. It's just a pole barn is all we're after at this point.
Any questions from the committee? Is this the only building then, or is there more than?
What's that?
Is this the only building or more?
There's
than
one other building that's still standing. There was the old original sawmill. And that we've got, the stuff in it also, but the rest of it's been tore down. Well, most of it fell down and we just cleaned it up.
Yeah, it's the use that was established, and it's now bringing it into compliance. It's really
Well, originally
simple.
how I got here in the first place, I didn't think it was gonna be that big of a deal because I thought it was G3 commercial. But that's what I've been taxed as.
That's your how the assessor's assessing
Right.
you, that's
Yeah.
not zoning. Yeah,
Right.
people always get confused with the
And
assessment.
so I looked at when I looked at my tax assessment, I'm G3 commercial, I said, well, not a problem, but come find out.
Well, and it's because sometimes, it's a kind of a combination of bringing a non-conforming use into compliance. But it was grandfathered in as it was, and now you're upgrading and fixing it and restoring it and all that. This provides you the permitting and assurance, but it's not a commercial zone, so one more hoop to jump through. But there are times when it's probably not a good idea, not this one, but that's why.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? If not, I'll open the public hearing at this time. Is there anyone wish to make any public comments? Public hearing. We have none on the phone, right? And I'll close the public hearing at this time.
So there is, just two pieces of correspondence, one from the county conservationist, nothing essentially was the response unless it's runoff is going into wetlands and lake. And then you have an email in there from the town of Trade Lake, where they, are encouraging the committee to approve it for the storage building for Birchwood Beach Properties. So that was why we postponed it for a month too. The township wanted to,
Yeah, they asked to have it.
have a conversation about it.
So we have those two comments. We have no general public comments on it. And wish to make a motion.
I'd like to make the motion on that.
Oh, yes, Mr. Brent. Go ahead,
Yes,
Brent.
I am still here. I'd like to make a motion that we approve CUP 2316, and that would also include the 7 items that were part of the staff recommendation.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll read the recommendations. One was follow all sign regulations. No outside storage allowed. Storage facility to be used for Birchwood Beach Properties customers only. Land use permit to be obtained for each structure prior to construction. Old building debris to be disposed of properly. Sanitary system be serviced, maintained, and reported to the county by 6/1/2024. 7, follow all local, county, state, federal regulations for this activity. We have a motion to second. We'll have a roll call vote. Mr. Sheminski,
Yes.
Mr. Blomberg,
Yes.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Payton,
Yes.
Mr. Conroy,
Yes,
Mr. Bickford, yes. CUP 23-16 has been approved. Thank you for coming.
We'll send you a letter telling you, and then you'll just need a land use permit to build the building, which I think you may have already applied, because that's probably how we got to this point, so. Yeah,
Okay,
should be good.
all right, thank you very much.
You bet.
Thanks for making it.
You bet.
I assume he owns the Birchwood
Yes,
property.
yes, he does.
When he talks about the sawmill, that used to be Peterson's sawmill.
Yep, he bought it from Miss Dwight Peterson.
Yeah. I think that's the son of the one I remember.
Oh,
Hey, the only thing I have a comment on is I told Craig earlier, I wish we'd have had that in the one for the CUP for whitetails. The one that says that the storage facility be used for Birchwood Beach properties customers only. Which I think would have been appropriate
Yes.
at the one at Whitetails.
And that was kind of a recommendation from the town of Trade Lake
Yes, it
on this
was.
one, because that's, normally I wouldn't put something like that in there. I will say enforcement, like all things, it could be a challenge on that. You know, we don't have a way unless they're literally advertising it or in the newspaper, but you know, we're not gonna go out there and check bin numbers on boats and make sure it's matched to the, you know, campsite 5 or whatever.
they put up a
Isn't that why we
sign,
acted differently on the storage one on Highway 35 and Lone Pine Road. Because we didn't wanna have to enforce it. Go up there and look to see what he was actually putting in there.
Oh, yeah. Well, you guys denied that one,
Yes.
Yeah,
but that, yeah, it's for
And that was
personal
why-
use only.
yeah.
in
Again, how
this,
do you know it's,
in this particular case, because it's sort of replacing what's gone on there.
you know,
It's probably pretty much a self-regulating thing.
Yeah.
Because there's already people that have their dibs on it for their stuff at the campground and
Yeah.
all that. And, you know, but like you say, it's sort of the honor system. You can't guarantee that'll happen.
Does a stipulation like that mean that Birchwood can't store their own stuff in there?
well, if they own Birchwood Beach, I would think
Yeah,
I'm,
But it says Birchwood Beach customer.
well, I'm a customer if I own my own property, aren't I?
I would think so.
Yeah, I don't think.
I'm my
we'd
own
ever-
customer,
I don't think we'd ever split hairs that fine. but-
yeah.
I just didn't know if that wording should be, you know, like Birchwood Beach LLC and its customers, or I don't know.
Yeah. I
That's
wouldn't
why I didn't
go,
bring it up when he was here.
I wouldn't go after it if it's, you know, if he has a skid steer or whatever,
Right,
he's parking it in there that he owns, I'm not gonna go after it.
But back when people used to actually maneuver their campers around, it all had a Ford tractor or a skid
Yeah.
steer or something to park them,
Yeah.
you know, move them around and park them on the site.
Yeah.
So, but that's all part of the operation. I'd be fine with that.
But you see, he does own some other businesses.
Yeah.
So I think that's what he's also probably looking to park some of his equipment. And in reality, I think, if it's all inside, do any of us really care?
Exactly.
But I think the town, you know, they might have like some docks or boat lifts or whatever that they
Yeah, I don't even think they have that many there.
probably not. But I mean, it's all, what I was gonna say, that might be something that's owned by the campground, not the customer, but it's part of the campground. You know, so yeah,
You know,
as long as it's all nice and orderly and maintained, we're good. The intent rather than maybe the verbiage perfectly, right?
I just felt that if it would have been for whitetails, we asked the question, is this gonna be for them? And they said 70% of their customers or people in the campground said they would use it. Well, what the town is saying with their objection is because it's they're gonna be advertising for outside people be bringing stuff in for storage.
Oh,
Then, then that's another part of the commercial, which the campground is already commercial.
right.
But that could be an argument for why it's expanded commercial, because if people that weren't originally coming into that site are now coming in to store
Yeah.
stuff.
And I don't think they would have balked at having that as a restriction at all, but if I remember correctly, I think what he said was out of the 100 campers they have, 70 said they would like a storage unit.
Yeah.
And they're only building 50.
Yeah, so in that case, it should be full
Right.
with just tenants from the campground.
But yeah, I can see where putting that in there would make sense.
But some of those campsites that they have there now, campers, they already have a shed
They already have a
Right.
shed full of
You know.
stuff and.
and
Yeah.
that's why if it would have been stipulated it was only for the campers.
Yeah.
All it is getting rid of stuff around the campground itself instead of storing it. So
Instead of bringing.
I just, all I did is I liked it, and I guess it did come from Trade Lake. It was a very good thing, because they're the ones that's gonna be saying yes or no, if it's commercial or not. They're gonna be the ones that know that somebody's, if he's advertising for your storage units there, they're gonna be the ones that.
Yeah. And the language in our RRC district does provide for campground and does provide for storage for the campground. That's the way it was put in there. So as to not necessarily solicit just independent storage, but that was, whether that's a good idea or not remains to be seen. We haven't used it enough yet to know.
Well, and then how does that go forward if the use goes with the property? It's like if it's not specified that it's, for the owner of the property, even with the campground. I mean, if it sells, even if we did have that condition on, I mean, you pretty much would need to have that condition on it. Otherwise it could be just general public storage that they're selling.
Yeah, because then the new owner could come in and go, I don't want to rent to my campers anymore. It's more profitable. Maybe if I do it to outside people to get the rates up or something, and you go, I'm gonna do it for outside use.
So that would be good to consider, if that's more the intent that goes along with
Yeah,
what the town wants.
It becomes tough when you start trying to regulate intent.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The intent is for the campers, but how do we know?
And if, and if, the campers, some year he has 5 units that are open, should he not be able to rent it to outside people? Or do they have to sit vacant? Yeah, I don't know.
The next application, Jason, how will the staff document the conditions?
Well, I try
Even after
to,
this conversation.
I try to remember, these little nuances when the next one comes up, but yeah, it's hard without it being written in the ordinance, that this is how we're gonna do it. It's a task of you guys or me or someone to remember and go, hey, remember 5 years ago, we put that one condition on that one place, let's do that again.
Well, we need consistency though.
Yes.
And if that's the way you have always done it,
Mhm.
not put that
Yep.
additional.
Yeah, the tricky part for land use regulatorily is to be consistent, treat
Mhm.
everybody the same.
Yep.
And it's sometimes a rabbit hole to try to do.
I'd like to see that as a future agenda item. I guess that's number 8. Can I talk about it? As a future agenda item, our working relationship with the towns. And, what that looks like, because even if the town has something to say at a public hearing, do they just get the 3 minutes or is it just the letter? And how much weight is that? And, how does it play into the ordinance? Because, if a town, is, saying, no, we don't want it, but it's something that's allowed, are there ways that we can work with the town? I would just like to review that relationship and how much, weight that carries.
Well, there's 21 probably different weights that carries, since there's 21 different municipalities we deal with, from very involved, like a certain municipality, and then other ones where I haven't heard from them in 5 years about anything.
But we tried to make allowances for
Yep.
that by, shifting the deadline so that we could hear back from them.
Yep.
And so, once we do hear back from them, I guess I'd like to know, I don't want to say legal standing, but what our requirement is, because sometimes I feel like we're in a tough place where, it feels like we're denying what the town wants, but is it superseded by something that the state or the ordinance says? And I guess I'd just like to at least have that discussion, if it's even just education.
And not a bad idea. Yeah, because it's always gonna be different, really. And just again, me spinning yarns for a minute, but I worked for a long time in Washburn County. 19 towns were zoned out of 21. They were really active. In Burnett County, the towns historically weren't all that active until more recently, where issues have gotten to be a lot more contentious and everybody is perked up, but the towns pretty much were, yeah, go ahead, we're good, because not a lot was happening that was raising contentious issues, right? But now it's not like that anymore, right? So, and it's a matter of finding our way. I remember my committee chairman in Washburn saying that we're going to treat conditional use permits just like zoning changes for the towns, which is way extreme, because then a few times the objections were impossible to address and kind of got over that. But it was never really that way here. I used to always kid Flanagan about that. Said, yeah, you got 7 zone townships, I have 19. It's not the same. Now we're 18 zone, right? Or 17 zone.
Yeah, we only have 4 unzoned.
And Washburn is, still a couple unzoned townships.
It's about even now, both counties.
Yeah, but it wasn't like that in the 80s and early 90s yet. So
The question about the public hearing, no. Granting them more time, no. Because you're gonna allow everybody 3 minutes. There's a lot of them, they're gonna send in emails, that isn't part of their 3 minutes, but you don't have to sit there and read them, in a public hearing either. Because if you let the town talk more than 3 minutes, and the other individual, why can't I talk more than 3?
that was a question that came up, remember, at our session a week ago, was it that if somebody has a lawyer, do you let them talk longer?
No,
But somebody was kind of pushing, well, we let, it may be that you could, if you had a group of people and somebody would award their minutes to somebody, you could sort it out, but still that would become a issue as well. And how do you make it fair? The applicant needs more time because they need to explain what it is they're pursuing, but we've had an applicant sit there go on for 45 minutes as well. Right? So how do we deal with it? And I guess it's up to the chair to
Is
regulate that
passing the
behavior.
baton, is that cool?
and I have shut down attorneys. I will not let them speak the second time either.
The one lady, it was funny because she said, what if the lawyer represents 10 of us? Does he get 30 minutes?
No.
3 minutes for each person?
That might be a little extreme, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I can kind of see if a group of people say, we'd all talk, but we'd like to let this person have some of our time. That doesn't sound unreasonable, but again,
Yeah.
then where do you put the cap on?
Yeah,
At what
because then
point do you-
we've had 100 people here, so they go, okay, we're gonna designate Johnny to talk for all 100 of
Right.
us. That's 300 minutes. So grab a coffee and a donut. We're gonna be here for a while.
Yeah, I mean, that is the unknown.
Yeah,
Trying to be more equitable, wind up being worse.
We have,
if somebody wants to speak, make them, over their nerves and get up there and speak.
One of the
Because they probably
times,
wouldn't. if they couldn't
remember
designate their time.
Remember though, I think it was in the town of Swiss on a conditional use permit, where the people organized themselves, they each had 3 minutes worth.
Yeah,
And it was like one of those forensic things where
handed it off.
Passing the baton.
Yep.
and it worked just fine, and under those circumstances, maybe that's what we should advocate. If you want to share the discussion, then organize your thoughts and do it 3 minutes each.
Yeah.
And that worked really pretty well.
Now, what's tricky though is what if you don't call on them in order?
Well,
No, cause,
they have to organize themselves. I
yes.
guess, yes. That would be it. Yeah, you get the closing arguments before the introduction, right?
Well, when they did it though, they stood in line.
Yes,
behind
they
the
were in
other.
line and they handed it back. Yep, to the next person.
Yeah, they did a good job, and it's the only time I've ever seen that happen, ever. It was effective though.
That was a time where it felt like it was us against them. Felt like it.
Well, yeah, we had people with signs and we had law enforcement on the premises at the courthouse. It was a whole different thing that time. You guys have no idea the fun you missed.
So procedurally though, I mean, you know, are we even allowed to, it's like, well, I have I mean, like a town person is here. It's like, can the, you know, I asked for clarification from the town, but not really because,
Well, I think I've done this a few times on applicants, and I think we could, if somebody had testified to something and we needed clarity, we could call them back. I think we've done that for the applicant. I don't know any reason why we couldn't do that for somebody else if we needed to uncover further something they said.
Yeah.
But I think it would have to be case by case and, you know, reserve the right to open that. We haven't closed the public hearing yet. We need clarification.
And specific probably to one item, not just to get, hey, can so-and-so come up here and speak for 5 more minutes about why you're opposed to this? It would be, you know, why did you say it doesn't meet this
I think on
requirement? Or,
I think on the large scale livestock moratorium issue, I allowed a woman to come back to finish her time because she got all emotional and couldn't talk. And I let her come back to finish and gave her a few more minutes and she earned, but we're trying to be equitable about it. And that wasn't zoning, that was natural resources anyway.
anyway, you do a good job keeping things in.
It's an imperfect world we live in, so we just gotta try to figure it out.
It's nice to have the
If anything you
Buzzer.
wanna,
Yes. I was gonna say, it's much easier if it's 3 minutes. If somebody calls me, I'll tell them like to come to a meeting, you have 3 minutes. Even at the township meeting, I'll say, you have 3 minutes, and it's just standard. And then it's the same for everybody, and then nobody can complain that you gave them more time than somebody else. It makes it easier, I think, because it sets a precedent. That it is 3 minutes. and
We're trying to
you can't
re-
say it.
we're trying to maintain order too
Right.
and make it fair to everybody, you know, so yeah.
and if you have more than 3 minutes of stuff to talk, you then need to narrow your bullet points down to the 1 or 2 items that really you're concerned about, not the 35 items that are bothering you about
Or
the
the
request.
repetitive testimony, right?
Yes.
We had some of that where the same people said the same thing, but
Yeah.
in their 3 minutes, but it took 3 hours for them all to say the same thing in their 3 minutes. And we try to, you know, tell, you know, don't just support that, but don't keep repeating the same canned objections that you've got on your email over and over again, right?
Well, does an applicant and their representation have unlimited time? I mean, because we've had, you know, an applicant talk and we've had, you know, their attorney talk and we've had their surveyor talk, and do they all get unlimited time? Is that,
Pretty
Something to
much.
share, yeah.
okay,
Pretty much, and the reason for that is that they again, before your time, we had a guy who would like to sit and talk for an hour if we'd let him a couple times, but for the most part, they're trying to present their case and we need to hear what their case is. And then we sometimes bring them back to ask them more questions. But all of that is part of the fact finding of the public hearing. And I'm not troubled by that as long as it's not abused, right? But it could be, and it has been, truthfully.
I'm okay with it, but it potentially, I think, raises questions for me. Sometimes it's like, if their legal person brings up things and it's like, well, wait a minute, you know, based on what they said, I'd like to ask a question of our legal counsel, but in that time frame, we don't necessarily have that
And
option.
if it was like a contested case hearing, you know, type of thing, like you might have before the board, then you might have to offer rebuttal opportunity too. But what we're doing is it was called quasi judicial, which is kind of surprised to me at our training session that a CUP is quasi judicial. I always felt it was more administrative because it's provided for. It's not in a variance, but you know, yeah. You do have such a thing as a contested case hearing where two sides are in an appeal or something, and then I think the 3-minute deal might be lost to be
Well, and-
equitable.
You know, and your point of asking, our corp counsel will never give us an on the spot opinion. So I guess if the guys can always table or postpone it to another month if you're always uncomfortable and wanna have more questions answered, so you have that route. You also remember that anyone can appeal this decision, so if people don't like the decision that is made, they can appeal it through, you know, the next steps.
And on both directions.
In both directions, people for or against things can appeal it.
How about
so,
the committee? Can we appeal? It's like, wait a
appeal your own
minute,
Decision, yeah, I don't know if you'd wanna do that.
probably not.
I don't, so question about our attorney. David never will
Right.
speak at a meeting.
It just seems. I would hate to, and it hasn't been often I've had a question, but it's like an attorney will say something, it's like, well, wait a minute, I'd like more clarification on that. But tabling it also seems kind of clumsy to make everyone come back, you know, because it's like, well, I'd really like
Well,
legal clarification on something.
again, I don't think if that comes up, I don't think there's any harm in asking, you know, I want to recall this witness to clarify something that he said that's bothering me or is unclear or maybe contradictory to what I've been told, you know, right? I don't think there's any harm in that, but that's at the discretion of the committee then, not at the discretion of the people present.
So how do we balance fairness and allowing the applicant to have the appropriate amount of time? And your answer might be, you just gotta bite the bullet on this, with something that happened last month where the lawyer stood up there and read through a PowerPoint presentation of however 50, 60 slides that was getting painful because he was just so slow. You know, and
but
maybe
they-
we just gotta
He's
bite the
getting-
bullet on that, but
He's
like.
getting paid by the hour
Yeah,
too, so.
Well, you
That's
know, I
right.
mean, like ahead of time, could the chairperson say, okay, you've got 15 minutes? You know, I don't know, I'm just trying to, cause that was a
my-
long time.
My instincts on all of those things are, I look at what's gonna happen on appeal if I have somehow preempted something that might have got his permit approved if I didn't,
Yeah,
right? So I'm inclined to suffer through it. Because if you don't wanna give a slam dunk victory on appeal to the guy because you got impatient.
yeah. And I mean, he's been here before, so it would have been nice if we would have got that ahead of time.
Yeah, they don't do that very often.
No.
But they complain if it goes the other direction sometimes that they didn't have enough time.
Yeah.
To see the information that's provided.
Right.
By someone
One of
else.
those, you know, we, back in the pandemic era, when we closed the public hearing and an attorney wanted to continue speaking and then Norm had to tell him to be quiet because the public hearing was closed. And he didn't use that on appeal and I'm surprised, frankly.
Is that only once?
Huh?
Is that only one time?
Well, the one time I remember, but it's probably more than once, yeah. But that was because he weren't present in the room, right? I
Yeah,
mean, we did a bunch of public hearings remotely in the pandemic and I'm sort of surprised yet that they weren't more of them appealed. Because it was kind of burdensome, you know? You don't, and you can't look at people, you can't read. There's no nuances of what people are saying. I'm glad we aren't doing it that way anymore, that's for sure.
Well, and the attorney's job is to, you know, say what they can in support of their client. But
Exactly.
sometimes I'm hearing it and it's like, you know, I don't agree with that interpretation, but I'm also not an attorney. And I don't know, it just seems like it can unduly sway someone who doesn't have an opportunity to, it's like, wait a minute, is that really what the law says?
Yeah, the law says what he's interpreting it to be to suit the interest of his client.
And you can find a case that will argue a point either way
Yeah.
on everything.
Mhm.
So,
Exactly.
Well, and I don't want to get into a match with an attorney kind of saying, you
No,
know,
it's kind of fun, actually. You should. I kind of enjoy it.
I nominate you to do that then.
No, I'm dialing back on that. I've had all the excitement I can take.
Thing with the Webb Lake one where we asked the question of David. And then we got the response. And that's probably the way we should always do it, instead of putting him on, because he'll stand in the back of the room and you know he's not gonna say anything.
So,
No, he said that before in other meetings. He goes, I'm not gonna answer a question without doing research, you know, just on the fly, cause then that can put us in a bind down the road if he's giving us bad advice or.
we could see right away that there was a lot more to this than we were prepared to try to cope with, and we needed some clarification. Again, because we were at a session at the county association that showed us how
Contentious things.
contentious or how broad this issue could be. So we kind of knew ahead. We need to have some guidance on the law for this, and ask Dave to prepare that for us before we ever got to it.
No, and you, Craig, you know, there's other counties where they don't make the decision the day of,
All right,
you know, we could always go to that route, cause then they'll have, like, I think how it works is then they have the staff write like proposed motions, I believe, that then the committee talks about and
Mhm.
approves or denies the next month. So then I could, you know, here's a motion with all these 10 conditions in it or something like that. Now, do you need to do that when a person's asking to have 5 chickens in their yard, you know? But I mean, so where's the balancing act of that
right.
too?
And the determination of that though is then you're putting a decision that you're sometimes gonna do it that way or sometimes not,
Mhm.
which again becomes a potential arbitrary and capricious
Yep.
behavior on the part of the committee. So,
Yeah.
you know, but we pull some stuff out of the air sometimes. That makes me nervous when,
There's a few times that I'm even sitting here going, where's this coming from? Or how are we gonna handle this condition or something, but, yeah.
Well, and some of it is years of experience. I mean, if you've encountered it before, it's kind of like, this is how we've generally handled it. And, you know, newbies might not have as much history, but it's not a reason to delay. I mean, some things are, it's like, okay, you've handled enough chicken things, and if the ordinance has been addressed, you know, hopefully there's not gonna be a need for more questions, but I suppose.
I think to a certain extent, it's human nature to, when you have a whole room full of people that are opposed to a single applicant, you know, that we've had that. We've also had in other places where it's about 50-50 split, you know, but those are always gonna raise the committee's blood pressure and level of concentration. And when it's like today where it's really obvious and easy and there's nobody opposed and it's perfectly rational, you know, but we still gotta go through the process the same way each time.
And there's somewhere, you know, cause I see these applications first, I think, I generally run through them in my head, this one will be easy, this one should, you know, like the Webb Lake solar one. That caught me out of left field when, you know, I didn't think I thought, solar panels, okay, yeah, it shouldn't be a big deal, and
Well, yeah,
to have it go to that.
the whole narrative for an area that the utilities having trouble supplying and
Mhm.
can supply it doing this, which is probably the most practical, cheapest way and meets the need the best.
Yep.
It seemed like, what? There's people opposed to this?
So it's hard for me to tell an applicant up front, oh yeah, this one's gonna be a challenging one. Or, you know, maybe the committee will table it, have to, you know, think about it. If some of them are, and the other ones are the other way, I'm like, this one might be controversial and nobody shows up, and I'm like.
Yeah.
It's a guessing game
And you
sometimes.
just never know.
Yep. That's why you have the public hearings. If we knew the outcome, we wouldn't have to have a public hearing essentially.
What's interesting, though, I shouldn't say this out loud, public hearings, it's like, if we're expected to follow so many different, you know, if this, you must do that, and if this, you must do that, then does that really matter? Or is it just bringing to light something that we might not have considered? Because it's pretty laid out how we're supposed to make our decisions.
It's both though, you know, when you look at the language in the ordinance basically about conditional use permits, using that. It says right in there that their conditional use permit is an activity that could be permitted in some areas, but not everywhere in the district. Type of generic language. Everybody has that. That was what used to provide us discretion before Act 67 to say, well, okay, that says fine, but not right here. You know, Act 67 then made us provide documented, detailed reasons as to why it's not okay. It used to be up to the applicant to prove it was okay. And now it became our obligation to prove it's not, right? In a simplistic form. But so that's back to your point, right? We've got to look at it and see, and are there reasons, are some things we didn't anticipate, you know, that caused this to be problematic and not as clean as it looked like? You know, that's what the public hearing is for. But then on the other hand, we'll get a whole bunch of testimony that people are opposed to it, but none of it rises to the standard of a basis to deny under Act 67. We've had that as well.
Well, before Act 67, it used to be public opinion.
Pretty much.
Was it denial or approval? And we had one that we denied, and then it came back and we approved it. And that was because we had a bunch of people that were neighbors, they didn't want it, and they had all kinds of reasons, but none of them were credible. So when it came back, we approved it.
I think it, for the most part, it's an imperfect system that is probably the best answer regardless. To get to the truth, make the decision.
Thing that's bothered me in the last year, almost a year. Some townships, I'll pick on the town of Oakland, they're gonna want it postponed for everything. And I talked to Jason and talked about it before. The reason we wanted people to get their application in early enough was so that it could be given to the town so they could come up with their opinion, yes or no on it. And when they sent one, well, three of them, I think, they wanted to postpone it. I said, no. It's permissible under the ordinance. We're going to continue with it. And they were not happy with that. But they still refused to go off of they don't want to, as long as I'm chairman, we're not going to postpone it just because they want to.
And I'll give you some history there of how Oakland, how they want to operate, I guess, is they want my staff report so they can make their decision. But I don't write my staff report until about a week before the meeting because I need to get input from people. That's why we have this notification. Because I look at the letters and the emails and the correspondence that comes in, and maybe that affects my conditions that I might write, or, oh, I didn't think of that. Maybe I should address that or something. So we're kind of that chicken egg thing there, is because I don't want it. They want my staff report, but I tell them I don't want to write it right away because I don't have any input.
Not when you
from
receive
anyone.
the application, you
I
haven't
know.
even done an onsite yet.
So but then they don't want to do anything until they have my report.
Yeah.
So that's,
I think to get back to, that's what I was talking about earlier about us providing guidance in the plan and language in the ordinance to sort the sheep from the goats a bit, right? So that, okay, these relatively innocuous CUPs, maybe technically that's commercial and it's not where you want it to be, but if it is not harming the district's character, the intensity of the use is similar, no one's going to notice, then that's okay. And it's consistent with the plan as we understand it, and we're not going to be, so you, town of Oakland, then when we see one that you think is going to affect a change, then make your call based on what your plan says, and then look at Jason's staff report later. Then, but at least try to get this thing so that we're treating everybody similarly, if not the same.
yeah.
Does your plan change, does it cover that, Craig, as far as, does it give you a little bit of,
We're
you've
looking,
got verbiage in there for
we've
that?
got proposed language. We haven't adopted it yet, so we can't really use it yet, but we've got some language in the plan that also exists in the town of Jackson's plan specifically, but I don't know of anyone else's, that looks at conditional uses that affect the change of land use differently than those that do not. In other words, that would be like a zoning change. That's gonna change. Well, the classic example is 180 park models in a cow pasture in an ag enterprise zone that the town opposed and correctly, and it was inconsistent with the plan. And that was a part of the basis for denial. But that's a huge change of land use. But like I said, a nail salon in somebody's home as a home occupation isn't going to change much, right? So, and that's one extreme to the other probably. But somewhere in the middle, we're going to say, we find that this is not going to rise to the level of a change of land use that is going to affect the use or the character of the district.
So what, so was the nail salon,
So that's guidance to us from the
but
plan.
that was a
to the
conditional
committee.
use, not a rezone.
Correct.
Okay,
But if you go with the town of Oakland's kind of thought process, that's commercial. So that should not be allowed there, period. Cause that's a commercial use, the nail salon. But then where we're kind of at is like, well, some of these are such small
They're
uses,
so innocuous.
so innocuous that is it really a change of use? And it's a conditional use. It's not like they can flip it then and make it a gas station,
well, and I think if
you know, so.
if the conditions are specific enough, because a salon could become a pretty big
Right.
complex. It's like,
Mhm.
you know, we're gonna do
Right, but we-
tanning and, I mean, so
Yeah.
as long as the conditions specify.
When we define a home occupation, it generally is conducted by the members of the family.
Yep.
An expanded home occupation might involve outside people. That's a different,
Yep.
potentially different one. But we have all this stuff already as in the ordinance. I don't know, we're just trying to do, and this comes back up a little bit to regional planning's tendency to show no matter how small of a commercial activity it is a bright red commercial on the zone, on the future land use map. That's part of what's given Oakland heartburn, and me too, to some extent. Because I don't wanna see a small campground on County Highway C shown as a commercial district in a township of Jackson, which has no commercial zoning. Everything is by conditional use in Jackson, on purpose, before Act 67. We had to kind of revisit that, but that's where this guidance coming from on what constitutes a change of land use becomes necessary for our evaluation. And back to the circle, we need to have some language in the ordinance to support the guidance from the plan. Because the guidance of the plan in and of itself is not an ordinance. So take us back to where I started earlier. But that,
When will the land use part of the plan be posted on the website?
good question. I don't know, but but I think that draft language is already in there. If the draft language is up on the
The
website.
draft is, but not for the last two, land use and implementation.
Well, maybe we're gonna meet on next week.
Okay.
I'll find out.
And
But
I
it's,
think because we still are giving people time to update the maps, their future land use maps, so those are all draft form.
sure, like
right
in
now.
Jackson, we changed that little campground, Lazy Bear campground on C from commercial to a different mixed use district like resort, whatever.
There you go.
You know, and that's just because I'm shouting fire. No, that's not, that's a conditional use. That was grandfathered in as unzoned, a non-conforming use. We brought into conformity with a conditional use. It's not okay to have a used car lot there,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
The guy on the north side of Point Lake has got that weird kind of compound. They had him as commercial by looking in the photo.
Oh,
So-
yeah, that's not.
He said, no, it's not. I don't know what it is, but it's not a commercial activity. It just looks like it.
Mhm.
So that, you know,
And the trouble, so that's, and this is probably getting off topic, but I see a lot of issues with those future land use maps, cause I don't think enough local people understand them and are looking at them that close.
no,
So we're gonna get these maps that are gonna come in and show all these commercial dots everywhere. That's gonna put those townships in a bind.
Yeah, what I keep telling them is
Future.
that you need to come up with something that says, well, the language I already wrote is that there may be, there's these commercial districts, and this is inserted in there in guidance already. These that show as commercial may be an existing non-conforming use, maybe a permitted by conditional use, or maybe in a commercial zone. If they're not in a commercial zone, they may be extinguished by the failure to continue them. If they go vacant for a year, then it should revert back and that little red blob should disappear.
Yep.
Right?
Well,
And that's guidance. And the point, and again, Oakland had this conversation where it shows it as a commercial use, but it's a conditionally permitted commercial use. And they don't want that to be a basis to make it commercial. The mixed use commercial district, you know, if they were willing to rezone to that, could be limited to a certain area, but they haven't been because of the precedents that they're concerned about. But at some point that will calm down.
well, and I think that note definitely needs to be on those maps. I mean, this isn't commercial, but that's how it's being used because that's been
Well,
used.
See, the text of the plan in those cases, in the town of Oakland's plan, doesn't show that as a commercial district.
Right.
Right? So the text has got to be incorporated with the map, not just look at the map only. And then the text now is going to recognize the map, the disclaimer is going to recognize this commercial use may not be by commercial zoning district, it may be by either grandfathered in or conditional use permit. So that the town or the county and everybody has a acknowledgement that just because it shows it doesn't make it so. By looking at one element of the plan and not reading the text, right? That's what we're trying to get our head around, but it's the regional planning seems to like to think that if the picture is worth 1,000 words, but no, it isn't always. It isn't necessarily the way you think it is.
Well, that's been used multiple times. You know, they'll say, well, this is what the map shows. It's like, well, no, you're misunderstanding the map. Okay.
That's again, that's what we're trying to clarify that for guidance. Because it's not an ordinance, it's guidance, but we're trying to get it clarified. So we can realize it's more subtle than what the map would show, right? But anyway, enough of that for today, right?
Anything else?
So I have on their next meeting date. Now, we technically don't have any public hearings for January. So do you not want to have a meeting?
Would that be a good time to talk ordinances
Or
or
do
is
you
that too
wanna-
soon?
I don't know.
Might be too soon.
If we, you know, if we wanna, if you think we'll have stuff ready by then, that might be a little early on
It
my,
might be with, especially with Christmas and all the holidays and stuff coming up. I don't
Yeah.
know.
and so, and I don't have a surgery date set yet, but it will happen sometime in December. A relatively minor abdominal, and it gets some hernias fixed. But it's gonna keep me from doing anything fun for quite a while. So I might as well work on this, right?
Not fast.
I mean, we could just talk about ordinance stuff in February. I mean, right now we have 2 public hearing items. One of them being like church activity in the town of Swiss. And the other one being the waltzing rezone that the town of Meenan asked to be delayed, and waltzing has to be delayed like 3 times, but the town keeps denying the request, and so we got that one.
We gotta clear it off the books,
Yes,
what it amounts to.
yes.
Because the town has continually denied it, I think.
Yep,
That being the case, yeah, I might not be ready for a meeting in January myself. So I'd be fine with it, but that's just me. I don't know yet when I'm doing this still.
Can those two things be pushed out to February?
those 2 are pushed out to
Oh, they
February.
are, oh, okay.
Yeah, so those are February items, cause they
Okay.
missed the deadlines for it to be on January, so I have no public hearing
we-
items for
If we
January.
wait till February, we might have some ideas to bring to further develop draft
Yeah,
language by then. But I don't think we would early in January.
So I take that as no meeting in January. Perfect.
Postpone until April.
Huh? April? No, it's that easy.
You're not gonna get out of it. no.
You can't get out of soon enough, yeah.
We gotta get one real contentious one for you to preside over before you're done.
Hey,
There's nothing else.
I'll make a motion.
Are we
to
gonna have a
adjourn.
meeting? in
So we will
January?
not have a January meeting then.
Okay.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Second the motion to adjourn.
Is that a second, Brent?
Yes, you did.
Yes,
Oh, okay, we have a motion and a second. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
hi.
Opposed?
aye.
Carried.